Hi, as you've probably seen from my previous videos, I'm interested in all sorts of things, constructing electronics projects, cars, old cars. I've been into old Volkswagens and American cars. I've never done anything pre-war. I'm completely new to anything pre-war. In the early 90s I built a sandrail which started with a Volkswagen engine and then progressed to an Alpha Sud engine, which is a water-cooled Boxer flat 4, and eventually ended up with a Rover V8 engine in the back, which is an aluminium engine originally developed by Buick, I believe. And I used to take it to a place called Pendine Sands. Pendine Sands is about 30 minutes from where I live in Wales, which is a principality of the United Kingdom. And in the early days it was a place where land speed records were set by people like Sir Malcolm Campbell. And in the early 90s you could drive on the beach. The council turned a blind eye, the local council, and it was fabulous fun to take a sandrail on the beach. And this is a video of an earlier me doing just that. As you can see, I'm a bit heavier and older now, but I am more experienced as a hobbyist, and I want to get back onto Pendine Sands. Now, the only way to get back onto Pendine Sands is to join a kind of 4x4 club or join the Vintage Hot Rod Association, which has an event there every July, which is a huge successful project. And I looked up their rules and regulations, and they're long and detailed, but basically your car needs to be built from pre-war parts which have to be American in origin. You are allowed a few deviations, such as the bodywork can be a reproduction body shell, as some of the originals are incredibly rare and hard to find now. And so to join, I need to build a car. The car doesn't have to be road legal, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. Combined with that, I always wanted to build a belly tank racer. Now, a belly tank racer is like a historic vehicle. In the Second World War, the P-38 Lightning, among other aircraft, had a huge fuel tank strapped under the wings to give it more range. And after the war, ex-GIs used to go onto the salt flats and build cars around these because, of course, they're aluminium and they're aerodynamic, and they're this sort of shape. There you are, this kind of thing. And I'll show you some pictures of those now. This is actually a photo of a P-38. There is the belly tank, you see, and you can have one the other side too, so it just gives you loads more range. And here is another kind of publicity photo for the aircraft, again showing the belly tanks. So what am I talking about when I say a belly tank racer? Well, here's a picture of one from the web. You can see it's seemingly very simple, but the difficulty is packing everything in. It's a packaging exercise. There's very little room to get you, the engine and everything else into the space. Here's a kind of idea of the layout. Basically the engine is behind the driver. There's no radiator in this one, there's just a giant tank of water. So you basically belt down the sand or the salt and switch the engine off before it gets too hot. That's the basic idea. You'll see it's a V8 engine, but there's only 3 exhausts on each side. That's because the 2 centre cylinders are Siamese together. It's a design quirk of the flathead Ford, which was used to keep the price down. Here's a picture of a tank, here's a diagram. That's the P38 Lightning plane that it would sit under. Here's another picture with the panels removed. You can see the engine here, the water tank here, and a rather cramped cockpit. Here's another one. Here's another one. They vary a little bit in shape, size and length, but you get the general idea. Shock absorbers are these lever type with the kind of oil-filled valve system, a bit like on the old MGBs inside, and it has a live front axle and a transverse spring, which was done to keep costs down in the early Fords. Now you can see here the frame, this is the back end, the frame is literally welded to the live back axle. There's no prop shaft on most of them. The engine is joined with an adapter straight to the differential. So basically it's like a hardtail motorbike. You've got suspension at the front, nothing at the back. This is Pendine Bell. This is a car, I'm not sure who owns this, but this has been made recently and runs on Pendine Sands. You can see here it's got rear suspension, which is probably why it's a little bit longer. That might be from a Canberra wingtip, actually, that tank, rather than a P38. Here's a top view. You can see it's welded in the back axle, and then to take some of the stress off the welds, presumably, you're using these I don't know what you call them, tie rods at the back to just spread some of the loads. You can see pretty compact. Not much in the way of safety gear either. Here's a nice front view, live axle, cobbled together steering. Often it's reversed from the way it would be in the car, which totally destroys the steering geometry, but gives you a little bit more foot-room because it's so compact. And again, the lever type shock absorbers. Yeah, lots of variations. There's a view from the back. Usual thing, lots of louvers, lots of period correct rivets. Here we go again, here's another one. Typically you put a seat in it from a bomber, literally a bomber aircraft. Of course, again, getting hold of a seat from a bomber aircraft is really difficult now. They're used a lot in hot rods, and I may end up making my own seat. Nice artistic view, top view. Some more. Some have a kind of bubble canopy to make them more aerodynamic. Covers on the wheels to make them more aerodynamic, and on the inside of the wheels. This is a recently-ish built one that's run, I believe, in the Netherlands or Denmark. This museum seems to have two, which is pretty good going. And an article from an old hot rod magazine showing a bunch of guys putting one together. To make the bodywork, I'm going to have to make something like this, which is basically a plywood jig to form my panels or to fit. This is actually a model that you can buy, but it gives you a good idea of the water tank. The Flathead's very unusual engine. The water actually comes, it's got two water pumps, one on the left, one on the right. Water flows this way, down through the radiator normally, and back into this side of the engine, and the same the other side. The variation, here's someone else doing the bodywork, if you like. Usually you have a aeroplane steering yoke type steering wheel, as it were. I suppose a bit like on the Tesla Plaid has something similar, I believe. And this is a rather nice one. This is actually has a fiberglass body and was built in the UK, but it's a reasonably faithful P38 tank shape. They've actually stretched it by about a foot. A lot of people stretch it just a touch because it's pretty hard to fit everything in otherwise. Now, of course, you might think, where am I going to get a belly tank from? The honest answer is you can, but they're $20,000 and upwards. So they're almost unobtainable, except in funny shapes and sizes which don't really suit the car. So I'm going to have to make my own. Now, you might think that's crazy, but believe it or not, there's somebody that lives about 20 minutes drive from me that has actually built their own tank as well as the entire car. So my welding is a lot better than it was 20 years ago, but panel forming is completely new to me. So that's going to be a skill I'm going to have to completely learn from scratch, as is TIG welding of aluminium, because the bodywork will be in sections welded together probably, or riveted with period correct rivets. So bearing in mind I don't know anything pre-war, I don't know anything about pre-war cars really mechanically, a lot of this project has been planning and designing things, so I'm not a CAD expert. This was done in Google SketchUp, which is free, and there's loads of designs. And basically I'm mocking it up. I know the dimensions from information on the web of a correct P38 tank, and I've got to fit myself. These things were always notoriously a tight squeeze. I've got to fit myself an engine into the car. So I'll go into more detail later, but I have a basic 3D printer, a basic laser cutter. I've done an accurate scale model, which sits here. This is a scale model to scale of me, which was made from a set of photographs using photogrammetry, sitting on my driveway. And here is a flathead engine. Now you notice the engine goes behind the driver, there's no prop shaft, the engine bolts directly to the rear differential basically, with an adapter that you have to make. And it's like a Formula 1 layout, bearing in mind this is late 40s they were doing this. Of course they were designed to only drive in straight lines really. There is steering, but there isn't much steering. And there you go. But as you can see, it's a tight fit, but everything should fit. I've been doing my homework. I've got books from all over the world on classic Ford engines. The engine I'm going to use is a Ford Flathead. This is a classic V8 engine that was designed when Henry Ford was very much still alive, and its purpose was to give people a cheap, affordable V8 engine. So there are some design compromises, but in a way they give it its character. It's not especially powerful, but as I say, it does have its own kind of period charm. I've literally been going through all these books, welding books, TIG welding books, how to build hot rod books, getting my head around the suspension, which is very basic, but I have admiration for it because it's designed to be to work with rough roads, and actually it is very strong, but simple. There we are, some sheet metal fabrication. So that's the project. It's probably going to take me a year or two to do, and as I said, the objective is to get myself back onto Pendine Sands.